Welcome to Keep Going, a podcast about failure and success, hosted by John Biggs. Every week, we talk to an amazing person about a time they failed and what they learned. And remember, when you're going through hell, keep going.
Welcome back to Keep Going, a podcast about success and failure. I'm John Biggs. Today on the show, we have Chris Beswick. He's a speaker, an author, and an innovation advisor to C-suite folks. Welcome, Chris.
Hey, hi, John.
Yeah, so it's nice to have another author on here. What are some of the books that you're working on?
That's a good question. My publishers are nagging me at the moment to write another one, but as you know, as an author, it's no mean feat. It's months and months and months of work. So still riding off the wave of my last one, which was called Building a Culture of Innovation, but I'm being pressed to write another one about the leadership impact of innovation and how leaders lead for innovation. So yeah, watch this space. We'll see if I find time over the next year.
All right. That's good. So tell me about your work. Tell me about what innovation means, and I guess why we need it, especially in a world that's might be innovating around us with AI and stuff, right?
Yeah, look, that's a big debate at the moment, right? You know, everyone's saying, well, you know, will AI take over? Will I lose my job? You know, will AI automate everything and make, people semi-redundant and all those things? I think the reality is, if you look at, let's go back a little bit, right? Let's go back to innovation, to the word itself. What I see in my world is the vast majority of organizations and leaders have forgotten the whole context of innovation. And what I mean by that is innovation for me is an outcome, right? It's the end result of lots and lots of things. It's the end result of insight and empathy and real understanding about problems and people and human centricity and all of those things, in order that we find a problem and we can properly solve it. And innovation is the end result of all of that. And if we do something as organizations, if we solve something so well, so brilliantly, that the people who benefit from that solution, if they say, wow, that solution that company has just produced, or that product, or that new thing that I've now got access to, that is so good, it's so brilliant, it's so much better and different than what was there before, that's really innovative. That's when something's innovation. The challenge we have now across the corporate world is we, as in organizations, have spent too much time self-professing how innovative we are. Governments talk about innovation. Companies talk about innovation. It's on strap lines. It's in company brochures. You know, we are the most innovative this and our new innovative approach. And we've self-professed. We've built a society where we self-profess in our innovativeness. And the reality is no one's looking at, well, that thing that we sell now as a company, that new product that we say is really innovative. Do our customers think it's really innovative? Does it really solve a problem? And when you look at innovation, and what I teach the leaders that I work with is to view innovation in that sense. And when we do that, we then realize how powerful we are as human beings in terms of our ability to spot things, our ability to solve things, our ability to be, to use things like empathy in really powerful ways to understand problems and challenges, and whether they're individual problems, whether they're systemic, whether they're global. As human beings, we have the power to understand that, and we have the power to connect with other human beings on an emotional level, on a really empathetic level, and figure out how we solve some of those things. And AI can't do that yet. So AI can enhance and supercharge our ability as human beings to be innovative, to solve complex problems. But it can't solve all of the components of that. It can help us, and it can give us more insight, and it can suggest things, and it can help us crunch numbers and data and figure out how problems manifest and how we might solve them. But ultimately, it's not like the Matrix, right? We're not doomed yet. As human beings, we still have things that AI can't do. And our job as creative people, as problem solvers, as innovators, is to turn the dial up on the things that AI can't do yet and the things that still make us human, and figure out how we leverage those. So innovation for me, yes, AI has a place in helping us be more innovative. AI isn't the panacea that everyone thinks it is.
I like that. I like the concept of self-professing, right? The idea that our company is innovative because we're doing X, Y, and Z. How do you avoid falling into that trap if you've just built something that may be seen as less than innovative, right?
Yeah. So here's the challenge for organizations. If, like, in your example, then, who in that example of that hypothetical company, who is looking at that product or that new thing and saying this is less, this isn't that innovative? Probably the customer, right? In that case, what we have to do is take a real, it's an inconvenient truth sometimes that as organizations, we don't do as well as we should do. And we don't produce things as well as we should do. And we don't provide the service as well as we should do. But we can't cut through all that by simply self-professing that what we do is innovative. If the feedback from our customers isn't absolutely phenomenal, then we have to take that on the chin as organizations and say, right, how do we solve that? And fundamentally, that is part of what innovation's about. We have a problem with our customers. They're telling us that the thing we do for them isn't as good as we think it is. That's a problem and an opportunity. And innovation is the capability that, you build the capability to then do something more innovative and more creative and different to solve that problem. So fundamentally, customer feedback and market feedback is one of the most important parts of the innovation process. What is the market telling us and what are our customers telling us that is either creating tension between us, is a problem, is causing them pain? And those are the problems we've got to solve, and those are the opportunities that we capitalize on. So that feedback is incredibly important.
How do you get that feedback? And again, I don't want to harp on that idea, but I mean, there's lots of companies or lots of startups, for example, who have, we've just invented this amazing thing for, I don't know, some SaaS product, and internally everybody loves it because it's exactly what we thought we needed when we were working as consultants or whatever.
Yeah.
And now we can sell this to customers. How do you prevent yourself from getting high on your own fumes as you build? How do you inject that innovation into the product to avoid a situation where I've built something for 2 years and nobody wants it?
Yeah. So that's about constant and continuous user feedback. So the challenges that you've just outlined there are not just startup challenges. These are big corporate challenges as well. We think we know what the market wants, therefore we are going to build it. And the challenge there is you end up spending huge amounts of money on marketing to try and convince the customer that they need the thing that you've created, because there's no real pull from the market because it doesn't quite solve the problem that they've got, or it isn't as different as you profess it to be. Therefore, the market isn't saying, yeah, that's exactly what we need. Like, how quick can I buy one? And you have to test stuff. We talk about co-creating with clients or co-creating with customers. In the design industry, which corporates need, big corporates of anything, whether you're a steel manufacturer, an airline, a biotech firm, it doesn't matter what business and what sector you're in. The design world has beautiful techniques, right? And frameworks and ways of looking at the world that still corporates don't capitalize on. And in the design world, it's not just about co-creating with customers. You build relationships with customers and you have a proximity to them that also allows you to co-unearth problems and opportunities with customers. What you have to do as a corporate or as any organization is build a proper connection, a proper customer-centric organization where you have close enough proximity to customers that you can spot tension and you can spot problems and spot opportunities, but also that when you start to address those and come up with ideas to solve those problems or opportunities, you can co-create and co-test those ideas along the way, rather than spending 6 months and $15 million and then you go to consumer testing and realize, it's actually, we're way off the mark. And that traditional approach to new product development that corporates still use the process doesn't give you enough proximity to customers and enough constant touch points where the customer is almost co-creating the solution with you, not validating that you've created something that they want. And that's what organizations still don't do a great job of.
When you go into a situation like that, how do you convince the brainiac behind the product that they need to start communicating?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting question. I typically don't get called in at that stage. I will get called in at either one of a couple of stages. So scenario one will be a CEO or a COO or someone from the exec will get in touch, and they'll say, first scenario is, we already have an approach to innovation. We already have processes, systems, we have a culture of innovation. We've spent millions of dollars over the past several years building all of this stuff. We've had lots of consultants in. But as I sit here today, there's no demonstrable ROI for all of that effort. So what I'll help them do is really interrogate and unpack why, and then fix that. The second scenario is same organization who hasn't spent a huge amount of money on innovation, who has tried and dabbled at grassroots level, but has never really looked at innovation as a core capability that they need to build across the organization. So they might have been in business for decades, but innovation's never been on the strategic agenda. So we'll build that capability together pretty much from scratch. In either approach, one of the core things that organizations need is a real process for understanding ideas and understanding problems. So in my world, the language is it's called an idea life cycle. So it's in essence, what are the stages that an idea when you develop an idea, what are the stages that that idea goes through as that idea gains in maturity? Right from we've found a problem, we think we've got a solution, right at the early stage, right up to we've scaled it, tested it, and now we're ready to roll it out to customers several months later. What are those stages? The very, very, very first stage of that, most organizations jump straight into, we think we've got a problem, and we've done a little bit of brainstorming and we've got an idea. We're going to now start developing that idea. That's a killer. The very, very first stage in every idea life cycle should be, let's park our idea for the minute and let's spend a decent amount of time purely focusing on the problem. Like, do we know everything we need to know about the problem, why it exists, how it manifests, who it really affects, how it affects them, what's the scale of the problem, all of the assumptions that organizations and people in organizations typically make about problems and ideas. Let's go and validate or invalidate all of those assumptions. What you typically find with that idea owner is if you take them through that process, they'll go, I thought it was this. And I thought, because look, Chris, I've been in this business 20 years and I would have bet my house that it would have been this shape and that size and that big, and it would have affected this many people. I would have bet the farm on that. I can't believe actually that those assumptions were wrong. So building a really robust process for identification of the problem before you then say, I've got an idea and we're now going to solve it. Because invariably, that person that you just mentioned that said, look, I've had this great idea, you can't convince me that my idea isn't right. If you take them through that process, invariably they go, that assumption was a little bit wrong, or my assumption about the size of the problem was a little bit wrong. What you then get to is a point where you understand the problem so intensely and so deeply and at such a granular level, then you say, actually, the idea I had wasn't all bad, but it actually now needs to look like this, not like I had it. Mm-hmm. And it's just about giving people really tangible, pragmatic, like down to earth, not big consultancy, theoretical, pie in the sky sort of frameworks, real practical, tangible. How can we look at this and how can we understand it better than we do now so that we can then figure out whether we've got the right idea or not? And when you give people those tools and you put them in their hands and allow them to use them, invariably you find that they go, okay, now I get it.
How should the average person how can find value in becoming somebody who's really good at AI, somebody who's really good at blockchain, right? Like every once in a while you have these little bubbles that pop up. How do you benefit from really going deep into a subject or a problem like that?
Well, how do you benefit from going deep into innovation as a core subject? Mm-hmm. So at a real macro level, if we want to go sort of really, why do I still do this? Why do I fly around the world helping big organizations figure this stuff out? Because some of the challenges that big organizations face, not individuals, not small organizations, but some of the challenges big organizations face are systemic. Mm-hmm. They ultimately can have and may have global impact. They might solve such a systemic big problem. I'm not talking about things like, eradicating world hunger and all of those things. Some of the innovation has the power, the process of innovation and the approach that we use to drive innovation, which has multiple stages and multiple facets. But when you combine that approach together, it has the potential to solve big global systemic problems. And the more of those big global systemic problems we solve as a society or as big organizations with global reach, the better the world gets and the better the planet gets. So anyone interested in innovation, whether they're in their organization or whether they're an entrepreneur with an idea, go deep on innovation and go deep on, what are the components of innovation, how, and especially organizations where you start, entrepreneurs or businesses, once you start having, staff, employees, and you start building that up, go deep on, this isn't a shout out for my book, but go deep on culture. Whether it's my book, whether it's other books, I don't care where you get that insight from, but go deep on culture if you're an organizational leader. Innovation as a capability isn't about a department, isn't about one team. It's not about R&D. It's a capability that you can build across an organization that everyone can apply, so that people in your organization can solve small problems that crop up every day. People might call that continuous improvement. In my world, that's still incremental innovation. It's still, we've spotted a problem. If we can solve it, it will shift the dial a little bit. Let's try and figure it out. Right up to big organization-wide problems or big systemic customer problems that might be costing an organization millions and millions of dollars a year, or causing customers real frustration and forcing customers off to competitors, whatever it is, those are problems and opportunities. And innovation is the capability that we build in organizations to be able to solve those things. So, but the key thing for any leaders out there listening is innovation is cultural, because a small problem needs to be solved in an organization just as much as a big problem needs to be solved. And that means anyone in an organization at any point through their working day probably has things, whether it is an individual or in their team or their department or their business unit, there will be lots of small things that need to be solved and lots of big things that need to be solved. So building that capability to solve them across the organization culturally is and back to your point with AI coming on board, building that as a capability is is more important than ever before. Culture is key.
Yeah, sounds like it's the point of your next book, right? With the innovative leaders.
Yeah, so the lead, I wrote about, when I wrote the last book with two co-authors, and we did write extensively on what we now call leading for innovation. The language before was was about being an innovative leader. What I talk about now isn't so much about leaders needing to be innovators or innovative themselves, but leaders needing to understand how to lead for innovation, i.e., how do I as a leader lead my organization and build the kind of culture and environment that promotes innovation being an outcome that my organization is capable of. The context is different.
All right, excellent. Where can folks find out more about you?
I'm on LinkedIn. As are most people. So there's no H in my name, which is the anomaly that normally trips people up. So my name's Chris Beswick. So it's Chris Beswick. So Chris Beswick on LinkedIn, Chris Beswick on Facebook. I think I'm also called Innovation Expert on Facebook.
Okay.
Google Chris Beswick or Chris Beswick on LinkedIn and I'll come up.
And we'll grab your book as well.
That'd be great. We'll send you one over.
When do you expect the next one to be up?
Oh, don't put me into that pressure. Without any shadow of a doubt, it's 2026. It won't be this year.
Yeah, I'm working on one too that I have a deadline in October, so I feel your pain.
Oh, yeah. No mean feat. So yeah, exactly. Good luck with that.
So this has been Keep Going. Thank you, Chris, for joining us.
My pleasure.
I'm John Biggs. We will see you next week.
Thank you for listening to Keep Going, a podcast about success and failure. Remember, Keep Going is entirely listener supported. If you're listening to this, please head over to keepgoingpod.com, where you can subscribe to the podcast for as little as $5 a month. This is a labor of love, and every little bit helps. Thanks for listening.